No matter who you are, no matter sex, age, gender, religion, there is always going to be a space for you in the creative arts because the creative arts is meant to reflect real life as itself.
Welcome to Platform Z, or Z, whichever you prefer. Join me, Noah Lennon, as I speak with my generation about a range of topics and themes in the present day. Hello! Thank you for tuning in to the 7th episode of Platform Z Season 2. Today I'm joined by a rising poet, actor and playwright from Manchester. At the time of recording this, he has just become the I Am Loud Poets Bradford champion. He's a current member of the Home Theatre's Young Company here in Manchester, as well as being a loyal, active member of Young Identity Arts Organisation, with whom I also am a member. He recently had his play, The Worst Part, performed at the National Theatre, which was also shortlisted for the 2026 Royal Court Young Playwrights Award. On top of that, he's currently longlisted for the 2026 Forward Prize for Best Performed Poem. It's been quite the year for him. And this is all at 18 years old. Finally, he has recently been accepted into drama school and will start the BA acting program at Arts Educational Schools, also known as Arts Ed, in London this September. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the talented, ambitious, and thoughtful soul, Mr. David Okodeh.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Noah. I'm going to love being here.
Thank you for being here. As you may have seen from the title, today we'll be discussing accessibility to the arts. And I'd also like to clarify that this is accessibility to the arts rather than in the arts. David, to start us off, please can you explain why you wanted to discuss this topic and also what the distinction is between accessibility to the arts and accessibility in the arts?
I'll start with the distinction. I think for me, accessibility to the arts is more about allowing what people who are described from low income backgrounds or communities who are less likely to be able to engage in like the arts or as freely or as often, giving them the opportunity and like the ability to be able to get involved in the arts. Whereas accessibility in the arts for me is more like once you're in there, like the fair representation side and making sure that creatives have diverse backgrounds and like even equal representation. So I think for me, the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic is because when I look back on how quickly my career shaped up, which is why I'd even call it a career, I think a lot of it has come from like help that I've been given to access the arts in the first place. Like when I think about my poetry career, it only came because I was a part of Young Identity, who offer free poetry workshops 4 days a week. And if I hadn't gone to that every week, I wouldn't have been able to develop my craft so easily. I feel like even though I started off as a self-taught actor, I've seen how different being at a youth theatre is to doing acting stuff by myself. And I feel like it's a really important thing to talk about how if I had never had any of these opportunities, I would never be able to embrace the skills that I've had. It was because of all the accessibility given to me that I was able to develop further.
This is a self-promotional break.
There have been a lot of self-promotional breaks recently, and for that I do apologize. However, I have to promote this show. So, firstly, thank you to everybody who came to the Lion and Unicorn Theatre last night, Sunday the 12th of July, for the world premiere opening night of Little Deaths by Isabel Palmer, a Hazel Wing Theatre production. Thank you to everybody, you know who you are, who showed up, who came out in numbers, who expressed their support. I love you all so much. I'm nothing without my community. You all have a very special place in my heart. You know who you are. Thank you. Okay, the next show for Little Deaths that I'm performing in is in Liverpool on the 25th of July. That's a Saturday night at the Hope Street Theatre. For those of you who are based in Manchester or in Liverpool or in the North or even Midlands, East, West Midlands, please do come along and support us if you can. This is a really special production, a really special piece on emotional abuse and coercive control. I feel like I've promoted this play a lot now, so you probably know a good thing about it. But tickets for that will be linked in the description. I'd love to see you there. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our listeners are from London, and of course, I'm from London, but we're talking about Manchester. You've grown up in Manchester. Can you just tell people a little bit about your experiences here in the arts and actually the arts sector for young people in Manchester?
I think it's been amazing to watch the art sector grow. I think definitely when I was younger, all I could think of when it came to like Manchester was like your classic soap operas. You know, I'd always just look at TV. Okay, cool. If you want to do anything that is acting wise, you're going to end up on the soap. But then as I've grown older, I've started to like realize that the outlook on young people in creative industries has grown, especially in Manchester. Now there's a lot more poetry places that are opening up. So a lot of the stuff that is at Factory International is now free to young people. Young Identity do free workshops. You've got youth theatres who are doing free shows or allowing people to audition without any cost. And I'm like, okay, it's becoming a thing where people realize that London isn't where all of the talent is, but it's where all the talent is being developed because people are getting those opportunities from young. So it's nice to see Manchester start using a similar process, start developing Mancunian talent as well, so we can go and do great things as well.
Defo. I think you're a result of that. I feel like I came at the right time to Manchester. I came in 2024. And honestly, since being here, it's been incredible to witness how creative the city has become and how many organizations are now popping up. And if we're talking about acting, lots of classes and companies coming up. And like you mentioned, Factory International, Home, the Lowry, of course. There's so much going on. So yeah, definitely on the rise, man. Don't sleep on Manchester.
Definitely not.
David, what were the key moments in your early life and childhood that led you to pursuing these creative passions like poetry and acting and writing?
Let's start with acting. So if we go all the way back to primary school, which was 2018, 17. In year 5, we had a Christmas play. My school did a Christmas play for every year group every year. But for some reason, I just sat at the back and didn't put my hand up. And I was super annoyed because I was cast as Joseph, which everyone's only gassed by, but I had no lines at all. So I remember being sat on stage like super mad. So I was like, the next year, I'm going to make sure that I get a lead. And we were doing this like play which had like a family. So the best role that I could have got was the dad. Then I remember auditioning for the dad and then being pulled aside and being like, oh, David, how do you feel if we change the play? And then long story short, they changed the play to The Christmas Carol and I was cast as Scrooge. And I had like a singing number, even though I couldn't sing, but this was before my voice broke. I remember being on stage the entire time and be like super gassed. I think from there I was like, wait, this is actually more than just like an obligation. It can actually be like super fun. And then when I went to year 7, I was like, I'm going to do drama as a subject, even though I went to an academic school. I was like, I'm going to do drama, I'm going to do drama. And then I think from that moment there, I saw how fun drama could be. I actually hadn't thought about pursuing it as a career by that point. And then along those lines, we then go to same time you came to Manchester, 2024, 2023, around there, I saw a Young Identity poster whilst revising in Central Library. And I was bored of the vision. So I was like, you know what? There's these people in this random glass box at the bottom of the library because it's transparent. So I could see everyone in there. And I was like, I'm going to walk in, take a paper and pen and write some poetry. And it was just such like a inclusive environment. And even though I was the youngest by a mile, despite the name, I felt like compelled to come back. And I think that was the moment that gave me the poetry bug of every week, come true, come at, every week, come true, come write poems. And then alongside that, I was then compelled to join. I was like, if a poetry group's so good, even though I'm a self-taught actor, I may as well join an acting group. And then me and my friend Safa both signed up for Home Young Company with Home Theatre. The last thing they had done was like a devised piece called Wasps. And long story short, with Home Young Company, that year we did National Theatre Connections. And then we got picked to perform at the Dorfman Theatre. And I was just like, I've performed at the Dorfman Theatre at 16, 17. the first ever time I've been part of a youth company. I was like, being a self-taught actor is like a really good thing to say. And it's a really like, I'm gassed to say I am, but I was like so like happy and so privileged to like being able to get those opportunities because I decided to take that step out and join the youth theatre. So yeah.
Amazing. And talk a bit about playwriting. How did you manage to get into that?
Playwriting is an interesting one. I have a very creative, colorful mind. So like I can look at something there and like create a random plot point about that specific thing. So I've always had the ability to come up with random stories. I would used to like write like 5-page books back in the day. But then it became a thing where I was like, I don't see the stories I think of being performed on stage as much. TV, there's a lot of like you can probably find a show about like anything and everything. But on stage, I was like, everything on stage seems to be a bit more realistic, naturalistic. And I was like, can I make my wild visions turn into like a realistic play that could move people? And I was like, because of my poetry writing, I was like, I could easily be playwriting. And now playwriting is like the sweet spot between my acting and my poetry.
That's amazing. Yeah, man. Keep going. When, if ever, did you feel you had to make a choice to switch from those things that we've just mentioned, poetry, acting or playwriting, being a hobby, to a potential career? I know you mentioned the word career earlier. Was there a moment, or were there multiple moments where you felt you switched gear to go, actually, no, I want to do this seriously?
I think the first thing that the complete trigger was I used to do boxing. I was looking at like our Team GB pathways. I was like, okay, cool. You need 2 fights to apply for like the regional like competitions, and you can get in. If you get there, you can get scouted. If you get to a quarterfinal, and then go in a camp, and you can go to like a different country. I was like on that like boxing grind, you could say. And then my gym shut down, and I was like, okay, cool. What can I do with all my time? Because I like being super busy. And I was like, you know what? I'm good at acting. I do it as a hobby just in my room. I was like, I may as well stop just only doing lessons and do like the school productions. And the week after my gym had shut down, my friends were in one of our school productions called Brainstorm, which is like a really wacky, completely like you get the scripts, but you get to like fill in the blanks from what they told me. So like they got to like make their own like scenes, they got to make their own characters based on themselves. And I remember watching it, and then I met my friend who I mentioned before, who I joined the company with, Safa. I met her. She's now going to Rose Briefing. And I met her friend, Seren, who's going to Emildale. And I was like, whoa, this is like the first time I've met people who not only have this thing as a hobby, but they actually see it as like a career opportunity as well. So that was all in year 9. And I just kept thinking, do I take this seriously? Or do I go to Cambridge and be a lawyer? that was that was the switch. And then I did a mock law competition in year 12. So recently, because the summer after GCSE, I was like, I think I might switch. But I was like, I'll still do the school clubs and stuff. And mock law is a competition where you pretend to be barristers or witnesses of a case. And I did the club since year 9. So whilst I was in the school productions, I was also doing mock law after school on a Tuesday and drama on like a Wednesday. And I got to be a barrister finally after all these years, and it was really fun. The witness I actually knew personally because they went to my church, so I was able to like push her buttons a little bit. I did really well. The judge started laughing at one point because I was just like absolutely like grilling the person who was on the stand. But then I was like, I think what I like about this whole aspect isn't the actual like intricacies. It was the performance, and it was getting a reaction from my audience per se. And then I think that was the point where I was like, you know what, David, drama school's the option. Take it as a career. That was just it. I was like, say no more. Acting is the career. Oh yeah, and then poetry, young identity. I did the workshops. They had the slam. They're like, oh, David, you should apply. I applied for the slam, came last. But I'd also applied for another slam, and they had accepted me the day after I lost. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just do it anyway. And it turns out I found out yesterday that they changed the rules with Factory International, because they had told Factory International all of their slammers would be 18, but I was 16. So they managed to change their rules and change their contracts with Factory International to allow me to perform. And then I managed to win at 16. And then since then, all my poetry stuff has all snowballed into like a career, which is mental to say still.
Wow. It's really, really interesting how these decisions, especially one that was out of your hands, like the gym closing down, have affected so much. And of course, you're only 18, so it's still very early on in your journey, but you're already achieving so much. Do you feel that your mentality and attitude in boxing has translated to acting and poetry and playwriting for you?
I think 100%. I think that's why I like poetry slams so much because it's like that thrill of adrenaline. Like it's 3 minute bursts of poetry and you're in prime competition, just as if like you're in a ring for 3 minutes and you're just like locked in. It's only you in there. You can't depend on anyone else. It's not like football or rugby or something where if you make a mistake, someone else can come like fix it for you. What I found with like poetry, it's a very individual sport and you have to make sure that even if you do mess up, you then have the ability to improvise and start. But that improvisational skills only come from my acting. So I feel like because of boxing, I'm able to think on my feet. I'm able to switch between my two skills easier. And I've been able to have a competitive mindset and a more like determined and like driven way of all my work.
Mm. There's absolutely an athleticism to poetry and to acting. I'm actually doing a paper next year, a dissertation for my final year at my university on the actor as the athlete, because I really do believe that a lot of those skills and mental ideas, values that you take from sport, competing in something like boxing or football or basketball or running, athletics, that kind of thing, definitely translates into acting and poetry as well. I mean,
100%.
poetry, when it comes to just even breath control and delivery, there's an art to it. Now, I want to move on to drama school. So we know that you've been accepted into Arts Ed. Congratulations. Could you tell the listeners a little bit about your process on applying, but then also knowing that you wanted to go there and then why choosing Arts Ed?
So I was on an academic bursary at an independent grammar school. So I had it fully paid. It was a private school, and I was slash am predicted 3A stars. So when we got to the whole university application stuff, I was like, okay, this is going to be a very like individual process because I'm not applying to the normal universities. So there were some drama schools that were on UCAS, such as the E15s and the Rippers. But I also was like, my plan is because I've done so well in the North with the poetry and to a degree with the acting, it would be amazing to also go to London and be able to have that experience in the London industry that I would always like idolize when I was younger. I was like, the only way to bridge this gap is to see what courses and what like accessibility blueprints that these drama schools actually did have. So over the summer, I did Ripper Get Set, which was a three-day residential at Ripper. So we stayed in student accommodation. We did 4-day workshops, 4-day lessons. We sat in talks about Ripper. It was there that we also developed monologues. And it was there that I was able to get some feedback from one of the teachers who was an ex-student at Ripper. And it was only there where I actually learned you need to make sure that the monologue you have has a playing age of yourself, because my monologues that I'd been picking because I was doing the process by myself were about like dads who had 3 children or dads who had a wife. And it was there, I was like, okay, cool. That's something I wouldn't have known if I hadn't gone to this business summer school. Then 2 weeks later, I went to a monologue boot camp in Leeds, which was run by Guildhall and Leeds Conservatoire. And then they just went straight into like how to do Shakespeare, how to speak Shakespeare like it's English, how to like repurpose your body, even if you have to stand still for the entire monologue to like bring the audience in. And I was like, this is also something that I wouldn't have known being self-taught. Because obviously the YouTube videos are amazing, but you only really learn more when you're in contact with the people who are actually teaching the people who then end up to be these great movie stars. So then from those summer schools, I was like, okay, cool. These are the monologues that I found. And one of the monologues I actually got sent was from one of the teachers at the monologue boot camp. and they sent a list, and one of them was for black boys who have committed suicide when the queue is too early.
Just a quick correction. It's for black boys who have considered suicide when the hue gets too heavy. I love this place so much, so I have to make sure we're doing it justice. Ryan Calais Cameron, if you're listening, thank you for your work.
And I read the play and I was like, oh, this is like perfect. So then I went on to apply to my schools, and the independent schools I applied to were Lambda, Varda, Guildhall, because I was in support systems for them. So all of their support schemes I joined. And I wasn't going to apply to Arts Ed because I was like, it's a bit too expensive. But then something was like, you know what, just back yourself. Like, even if it is a bit too expensive, because of your situation, because of like all the stuff you've had to go through at the start when it comes to finances, because you don't have the accessibility, it would be a bit ironic to then let all of the finances and stuff be the reason why I didn't apply to a good school. So then I applied to Arts Ed. I somehow got in, and then I had to decide between Arts Ed, GSA, and Ripper because those are the three schools I got into. And then I got lucky enough to get a scholarship at Arts Ed, and now that's where I'm headed.
Wow. And for the listeners that don't know what LIPA stands for, it's Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, a really great conservatoire in Liverpool. Okay, David, moving on to the end here. What is your message to those who are looking to get into the creative arts, but maybe don't feel that they are the right fit or simply don't know where to start?
My advice would be that the creative industry is meant to reflect real life anyway. TV shows about a black community, a Hispanic community, Asian community, white community are all there to reflect those communities in real life. No matter who you are, no matter sex, age, gender, religion, there is always going to be a space for you in the creative arts because the creative arts is meant to reflect real life as itself. When it comes to poetry, when it comes to acting, I would say, even playwriting, I would say two things. One, consistency, and two, community. Consistently writing, consistently acting, consistently reading a play, consistently doing anything that feeds you creatively. 100% do that at least once a week because then you're always in that mindset of, I've got something new to look forward to. And then community, I'd say looking for mixes, looking for workshops, looking for talks, looking for environments where people just read plays together, whether it's free or whether it's paid. The quantity and also the quality of like said workshops or said groups has increased a lot in like the last 2-3 years, especially since COVID. And I feel like it's definitely an opportunity for people to build their own creative communities.
Beautifully said. And I'm so happy that we're talking about this. It's all resonating. And I'm sure for so many young people who want to do something like drama in school or do something like even just music or art, there's still a lot of work to be done. And these areas are being sort of shunned. Like we don't have the funding. People don't want to study that anymore. But yeah, I think your story is evidence that accessibility to the arts is so important. So thank you for sharing.
Of course, anytime.
Moving on to the Platform Z quickfire questions. Are you ready, David?
Of course.
What was the most recent thing that inspired you?
The National Theatre Movies Festival. I think seeing the other 5 playwrights and like their stories, what they chose to write about, and also meeting all the actors and being like that close proximity and working with them, I was like, this has inspired me to not only go back and make sure that I perform at the Littleton, but also to complete my play and make it into a bigger full-length play.
Wow. What is your goal for this month?
I'm actually working with Young Identity this month as an assistant facilitator. So I think my goal for this month is to see about my workshop style and my teaching style when it comes to poetry.
Amazing. Facilitating at 18. Honestly, you're doing everything right. You're doing so well.
Trying.
What's one bad habit that you need to get rid of?
I think a bad habit that I need to get rid of that a lot of people say I need to get rid of is my sleep schedule's pretty bad. Like, if you look at my calendar and all the stuff that I do and all the timings on there, like you would imagine, you would guess that I don't even sleep because I'm always just constantly busy. So I think the sleep schedule is probably the worst habit I have.
I feel that. What does joy look like to you?
I think it's just like being around my people, even like when it comes to like ensemble, when I'm working with when I'm doing fun workshops with my friends at home, or when I'm just doing poetry stuff with my friends, and it's like there's no like gain from it. It's not. It's I'm just doing it for pure fun and pure enjoyment.
When have you felt the most love?
Ooh. Oh, I think I've got one. For my final show at MGS, the school I went to, we did Dracula. And it was actually the first show that I've done where I managed to get like a lead role because I played Jonathan Harker. And the final bows at that show was genuinely like the best thing I've ever experienced. I was like, oh, I can't wait to do this again. So I think that might be the answer.
Wow. What's the one thing you'd change in today's society?
That's a good question. I think I'd change, yeah, political literacy. I did drama, English lit, and politics A level. And even though drama and English is so easy because that's the stuff I want to do as a career, politics was my favorite subject because it's so current and there's so many more intricacies behind it than I thought there was when I first picked as an A level. I thought it would just be like the standard stuff. But when you learn all the examples and you learn all this stuff, I'm like, this is stuff that we probably should learn whilst we're younger. I know in America, when you're in primary school and stuff, whatever their equivalent is, you learn like the Bill of Rights pretty early on. You learn a lot of political stuff very early on. And I feel like, especially in today's society, I feel like younger people, as the voting age goes down and as there's a lot more devolved rights of like mayors and all these like MPs and stuff, I think the youth need to know more about politics.
Mm. And it's so important politically to be informed, especially for our generation. Okay, well, that's the end of another episode. David, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Please take a moment now to tell the listeners where they can find you, what you've got going on, what you've got coming up.
I mostly use Instagram. So my Instagram is just my name, which I'm guessing is on the title of the episode. So David Okodeh, hit me up there. I don't use it that frequently, but I also have a TikTok. Coming up, I am performing at the National Poetry Showcase as a representation of Young Identity. That's next Saturday, I think. I have the award show coming up for Young Playwrights Award. I'm doing NYT in August. Anyone who's doing NYT in Leeds, I will be there as well. And then, as we mentioned before, the slam I won in August on the 15th, I'm going to be in Edinburgh performing at the Grand Slam final. So that is going to be fun.
There's a lot coming up.
A lot coming up.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time.